All right, everyone, there's still a hard-on that happens every time something related to the Trump, Russia, Mueller, Manafort, Podesta sort of probe stuff is mentioned. And it has become sort of an amalgamation of totally different things, like that Russian lawyer who has ties to Fusion GPS, a company that produced the Steele dossier and worked with the Democrats and with the Never-Trumpers in the first place. Some people, by the way, were trying to cover for this, saying, well, Fusion GPS originally was op research for, I guess, the Jeb campaign. Yeah, but he's a neocon rhino. Doesn't have anything in common with Trump. He's part of that same deep state that Trump himself has mentioned. It's not just Democrats. Not all Democrats are part of that. Look, a Kucinich or a Bernie Sanders isn't part of that party. We may think that they're kooky, I certainly do, but they're not part of the deep state party at large because they don't have the same views. The same is true on the Republican side, like a Rand. Do you think they invite Rand to their eyes wide shut parties? No, probably not. But Jeb Bush and John McCain are probably there. So that has nothing to do with it. But this lawyer went briefly viral because they're like, whoa, definitely met with Jared Kushner and Donald Jr. and offered them dirt. And the Steele dossier must be true. It's like, no, it isn't. It's totally, utterly decrepit. And nobody thinks that it's true. Including a lot of people on the left. They understand that it was a falsified document largely. Any elements of it that were true, oddly enough, it would have been coincidental. The fact is that this lawyer that you're trying to liken, you're saying, well, she has admitted she was a Russian informant. Okay, so a Russian informant worked with a company that was paid by the Democratic Party to conduct op research on Donald Trump. That's what you do realize. That's what that means, right? It means that Jeb Bush paid a company that works with Russian informants. Shouldn't that be the story of the day? No, instead the story was, oh, but she met with Jared Kushner once and he declined dirt on Hillary Clinton, thought she was full of shit and the meeting ends early. But that's a big story. But it's not a big story that she has ties to the company hired by Trump's adversaries on both sides of the aisle. That doesn't mean anything to you. Okay. The Mueller probe at this point is a fiasco more than a probe. It no longer even makes sense to regularly cover it. It's like every week or so, there's some trending topic related to the probe. Oh, Mueller indicted another Russian person for having a Facebook ad. And by the way, those people get off scot-free because there's no way to charge them for that. Pretend it's not a crime. So you can charge them for other things maybe. They worked with the Russian state and hacked things. Okay, well, if they hack things, that may be a crime. But otherwise, no, buying Facebook ads, even if the Kremlin gave you the money for it, is not against U.S. law. You do realize that, right? You can buy Facebook ads. There's no law against it. Where's the law? Where's the line in our legal system that says foreign nationals cannot buy ads related to U.S. politics on U.S. sites? Does that law exist? I'm pretty sure it doesn't. I'm pretty sure that indictment is toothless. I don't even think that most of those people are in the United States physically. What about Manafort? Manafort, oh, okay. 10 years ago he worked with Tony Podesta to launder money. There's a headline I'd like to see. Oh, John, yeah, Clinton's campaign head, her brother worked with, the dude who headed Trump's campaign and they laundered millions of dollars. Oh, can you say that that's a little bit odd? A little bit suspect? At the very least, it wraps up the Clinton campaign directly with any dirt that Trump would be involved in. Shouldn't that make you think twice about wanting that to be a page one story? No, they say it's too exciting. There are still people who think that Mueller is going to indict Donald Trump. I just sit there and laugh. I'm like, no. Originally, my estimation was that the Mueller probe is the insurance on Trump and that it might drag on forever. But now that the House Intel Committee, of course biased as it is, politically biased, well, the fucking, everyone understands that. Republicans understand that the House Intel Committee Republicans are biased in favor of Trump. It's just the name of the game. But they still didn't find any measurable evidence that there was collusion between Trump and Russia. They found no particular evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. It doesn't exist because it never happened. Between that and Rudy Giuliani now being very visibly Trump's go-to guy, Mueller's probe may have no choice but to end. They may not be able to keep that farce up through 2020, which I think was otherwise the plan. If it ends, Trump's approval will skyrocket overnight by 5 to 10 points, and he'll win re-election. That's assuming that Mueller has to end his probe before 2020 and doesn't manage to weasel his way through keeping it on. At this point, I'm not sure that he will. Because with House Intel against him, Rudy Giuliani, increasingly people are falling out of favor with the story at large. They're like really scraping the bottom of the barrel. And the real last nail in the coffin, I think, the real tell for why the Mueller probe has failed to find collusion is that the Democrats are starting a civil action along the same lines. There'd be no reason for them to start a civil action, which, by the way, doesn't mention Trump either. It only mentions people related to the Trump campaign, not him himself as a candidate. They're attempting to sue WikiLeaks and some Republicans and some Russians and the nation of Russia and stuff. And it's like, it's a total farce. You can't really sue a foreign state effectively. WikiLeaks you can't really sue them effectively. You're not going to be able to sue the Republican, Trump campaign itself. You still haven't determined any specific collusion went on. In that lawsuit, I guess the idea is to drag that out forever in order to have a second layer of protection for if the Mueller probe has to end. I think the idea is that the criminal side of it is going to end sooner rather than later, so they got to have a civil probe now as the next best thing to try to stamp down Trump's approval. I think they're terrified of him. I think they're terrified that their entire narrative built on Russian collusion, from the middle of the campaign, from the primaries on forth with the DNC leaks. Every step of the way, they've blamed Russia for their losses, and they've said Trump was somehow involved, or at the very least, people high up in his campaign were involved. If you don't have evidence of that and end the probe, his approval skyrockets. It leaves you hanging because you look dumb. You've wasted several years and millions of dollars investigating crimes that didn't actually happen in order to basically find evidence of a money laundering ring and some Facebook ads. That's basically what the Mueller probe has turned up. Is that really going to look good for number one, Hillary Clinton, number two, Perez and the DNC's higher-ups, number three, the Democratic Party at large, like even the lay Democrats, number four, Mueller, number five, the FBI? All of these different groups that have stood against Trump would be left looking like assholes. Comey would look like an asshole. McCabe would look like an asshole. Mueller would never work a fucking again a day in his life. He'd be fired the next day for being so inept. The Democrats would want him fired at that point. And that's probably what's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Because I'm not seeing, I almost don't want to talk about it because nothing that has actually been produced by the Mueller probe since the 13 Russians indictment was meaningful. Because, oh yeah, we found more evidence Manafort did something wrong. Okay, you've already indicted him. So who cares? Oh, Michael Flynn went back on his original claim. Now he's saying he's not guilty and he's going to fight the charges. Well, yeah, probably a good idea. Probably because he realizes how full of shit the probe is. The 13 Russians got indicted. Okay. Russian nationals, they bought Facebook ads. How is that a crime? And where, by the way, does this all tie into Donald Trump? These are separate incidents that you're investigating that are related to people who worked on his campaign. But the Manafort thing doesn't have anything to do with the Kushner claim. The Kushner and Don Jr. met with a Russian agent who worked with people who were against Trump. That's a totally separate issue from a money laundering scandal. The money laundering happened 10 years ago. It had nothing to do with the Trump campaign. It involved a Podesta too, a Democrat. Manafort at the time, he's a Reagan Republican. He's better off working with the Democrats than with like the Tea Party or something. Think of the political situation at the time that it occurred. Most of the Republicans they would have had power to work with him at all were a bunch of evangelocons, newcomers. He's not going to work with them. He can work with a Trump, basically a business Democrat Manhattan socialite. He can't work with he can't work with a Rand Paul. He can't work with somebody who's a libertarian or leans towards snake handling or something. No, the probe is falling apart. It's meaningless. And people keep masturbating themselves. If they're leftists, they're liberals, and they keep whacking themselves off to the thought that the probe is going to stop Trump. It's going to get rid of him. Salon warned you 6 months ago not to expect that to happen. Now, you'll pessimistically say, oh, yeah, well, the law is like a spider's web. The little flies get caught, but Trump is a wasp, so he goes free. It's a miscarriage of justice. You're going to do the Comey thing, where you've spent time applauding him for how wonderful he is, because he says, no, Trump won't dare fire me, and Manafort gets, indicted, and then Flynn gets indicted. So you've applauded him for over a year. And then as soon as he has to say, but Trump did nothing wrong, you're going to come down around him like wolves, and you're going to start nibbling away at his bones, and you're going to say, oh, Mueller must have been, at the end, he took Trump's money. or Trump managed to threaten him, or it was with him all along. It's a ploy by the evil Republicans. That's exactly what will happen. Meanwhile, a bunch of Republicans that said Mueller was the Antichrist all of a sudden will say, oh, he was our boy all along. You watch what happens. They did the same thing with Comey. And then he'll come out and write a book, and then it'll switch again. They'll say, oh, yeah, he didn't like Trump. He realizes he'll do the pity party thing that Comey did, which is basically, yeah, nothing wrong was done, but, here's my apology tour. Give me fucking money. Fucking give me some more money. That's what Comey's been doing. And so he gets to go on Ellen and Oprah and stuff like that. It's like, it's really, really surreal to watch. I mean, he's 6'7". He looks like Frankenstein's monster, only without a bolts in his neck. And he goes on to these talk shows. You got to imagine that everyone else has to have lifts in their chairs like Zuckerberg did in order to not look like he's dwarfing them. Like he's got fucking gigantism or something. And they're asking him things like, what's your favorite color, Mr. Comey? What flavor of tea do you take? How do you take your coffee, Mr. Comey? Yes, you're such a wonderful individual because you said you didn't really like Trump. That's basically why he's there. And you can imagine they pay him a monumental sum for this. He probably gets 5 or 6 figures every time he makes an appearance. Oh, he's cleaning up. Yeah, he's certainly going to be paying a higher tax rate than he was as FBI director. Yeah, I don't know how much money he was making. He's making far more now off his book alone. He's probably made millions. Yeah, I mean, they paid him $2 million just to write it. Please write a book with us. Oh, it'll be worth so much, and we'll give you royalties. And just think of that. No, I look at like my Amazon royalties, and I'm looking at the ratings of his book. I'm saying, yeah, he's made a lot of money. It's certainly at least in the 6-figure range, above and beyond the $2 million they already paid. It's probably higher. And then his book is like basically gobbledygook. It's really funny. Not that I'm not expressing jealousy there. More power to him as an author, but it is like generally agreed upon to be largely just bullshit. So it should go in the political satire section, but it's a good political satire, I guess. Kind of self-deprecation after a while, but the Mueller probe itself is meaningless. There's no reason to really talk about it. Like, this is almost going to be like the last video I make before the probe inevitably ends. Because, like, who else are they going to indict? When you've got carte blanche to look into literally anything related to literally anyone under the sun, the FISA court has given you basically unlimited power to do whatever you want, and you still can't find, apparently after over a year and a half, evidence of collusion with a foreign state. That's the death knell of your probe. Where is the evidence? Oh, we caught Manafort money laundering. Good, good for you. You should have had a separate probe for that then. That has nothing to do with Russia. It has nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with stuff 10 years ago. It's total bullshit. That's about all. Peace out.